Late Sunday afternoon, Malcolm X was murdered as he was about to address a nationalist meeting at the Audubon Ballroom in Upper Manhattan. Moments later, Malcolm's followers seized one of the gunmen as he tried to escape the scene. Intervening policemen engaged in a brutal tug-of-war to keep the man from being torn to shreds. The cruel irony is that Malcolm was murdered by members of his own race, the very people he was fighting for with his extraordinary abilities. And that is the central theme of this documentary. The telling of this tragedy oft resembles a biblical story or a Shakespearean drama, laden with all the passions that flesh is heir to: love and hate, loyalty and jealousy, unselfishness and greed, morality and debauchery. May we all profit in the telling of this story, resolving never to repeat its grievous mistakes. At center stage in this human tragedy is Malcolm X, a superb intellect with exceptional analytical ability, gifted as a powerful speaker and blessed with a quality that few others have: incorruptibility. Time would show, however, that Malcolm's glaring frailty lay in his blind devotion to the man who had salvaged him from a life of crime, Elijah Muhammad. Elijah then must also be accorded a dominant role here. As head of the Nation of Islam, also known as the Black Muslims, Elijah provided the structure within which Malcolm would develop. But it wasn't destined to last. This powerful alliance of Elijah and his devoted lieutenant Malcolm X would be split by individuals within the Nation of Islam, as well as by persons working for the United States government, who infiltrated, helped divide, and set the stage for Malcolm's ouster from the Nation of Islam, and then his murder. Malcolm's brother Wilfred, himself a minister in the Nation of Islam, bore witness to this tragic scenario. His narrative will be key to our story. Percy Sutton, former Manhattan Borough president, currently chairman of the Inner City Broadcasting Corporation, was a friend and personal attorney of Malcolm's. Mr. Sutton is one of the few who stood by Malcolm when the going got rough. 6 nights before he was assassinated, an exhausted Malcolm spoke to his followers. His house in Queens had just been bombed. He had been eluding his would-be assassins for the past year. He had been traveling overseas. He had been traveling down south. He was trying to get his 2 organizations moving, and at the same time, he gave as many interviews as possible, making as many speeches as he could, telling as many as would listen about the complexity of elements that would take his life.
As many of you know, Sunday morning about 3 o'clock, somebody threw some bombs inside my house. Normally, I wouldn't get excited over a few bombs, but the ones who threw these not only aimed them in rooms where there was no one, but aimed them in rooms where 3 of my daughters sleep. One daughter 6, one daughter 4, and one daughter 2. I heard on the news today that Joseph, a brother that I found in the garbage can in Detroit in 1952, well, that's where I found him, made the statement that I had bombed my own house. Now, you see, this doesn't surprise me because I know that since many of us left the Muslim movement, its intelligence and its morals have gone bankrupt. Both its intelligence and its morals have gone bankrupt. And now they are using the same tactic that's used by the Ku Klux Klan. When the Klan bombs your church, they say you did it. When they bomb the synagogue, they say the Jews bombed their own synagogue. This is the Klan tactic. And tonight, I'll tell you why the Black Muslim movement is now adopting the same tactics against black people as has been up to now the exclusive method of the Ku Klux Klan. I want to point out, too, that I'm not talking about Muslims just to make white people happy, because I don't believe in letting anyone use me against somebody else. I'm telling you these things because it has reached a point where I feel that black people in this country need to know what's going on. And I'm talking about an organization which I had a hand in building, which I had a hand in organizing.
He'd go throughout the country, he'd go into a city, he'd find somebody who'd be willing to have it in their home. They'd go out and scout up some people and bring them to their home, and he would talk to them in their home. And then he would tell them to go out and bring some people, and they'd go out and bring some more, and he would talk to them. And they would start from that, and from that they'd grow until they reached a point where they had to have a building where they could meet.
And how many cities did he do this in?
Oh, there's no way of knowing. All over the country, north and south. He'd be on the road sometimes, just day after day after day, just going across the country to cities that he thought had a population of our people that might be willing to listen, and starting it.
As intelligent as the white man is, or has been in the past, if he knew the intensity of the dissatisfaction and impatience that is building up in the minds of the masses of these black people, you wouldn't see him running around here calling Mr. Muhammad a hate teacher. He would look upon Mr. Muhammad as an alarm clock that's doing him a favor, waking him up out of his sleep before it's too late.
He insisted on honesty and in doing the job if you're going to be on it. He didn't require anything of them that he wasn't doing himself. And his act was a hard act to follow. He didn't, many times I used to wonder if he realized that people just couldn't be, in general, just couldn't be as dedicated and committed to a thing as he was. You don't find that many people. You don't find too many people that will commit themselves the way he did. Many nights he wouldn't get but 4 hours sleep, sometimes less. He would go until he just couldn't go any further. And then he'd have to get some sleep, and once he woke up, he'd wake up running.
In the late of the night, I've had the chance to talk. In the early morning hours, I had the chance to talk with him. I do know that he was a loyal follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to the extent that I perhaps wouldn't have been, or you perhaps wouldn't have been. A loyalty that was unusual.
Representative Powell implied in a statement, I believe it was over the weekend, that he had summoned you to Washington to fill a gap in leadership. Is that correct?
No, Adam Clayton Powell has never summoned me anywhere. Adam Clayton Powell could not summon me. The only man in America who can summon me anywhere is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The stick that I always used in presenting, representing, and defending the Muslim movement was the fact that it had the ability to reform the morals of the so-called Negro community.
One time I mentioned to the messenger, I said, you know, sometimes people need a chance to relax. Maybe I'll have some parties or something. I was just, picnics or just something to get away and break them and get a chance to relax some. And he told me, he said, you know what would happen? He said, if you let them get anywhere near what they used to do, he said, they'll go right back into it. It's just like taking a fish out of water. He said, if you lay that fish on the bank, he's going to flop around till he gets back in the water. And he said, it's the same way these people will do. He said, if I let them have any kind of freedom, he said, they'll go right back to boogieing and drinking and everything else that they used to do.
The teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is like nothing I have ever taken. It's a medicine.
Right.
You see,
right.
It's a medicine that has cured me of all my ills.
Yes,
because I was a sick man.
That's right.
And when I embraced the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, these teachings cured me of these ills.
Right.
I'm a well man now.
Right.
And I feel good.
That's right. As long as you stay with the doctor, you continue to
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The so-called American Negro have to be completely re-educated. He have to be completely made over.
The messenger had already spoken that the hair should be cut in a neat manner. But Malcolm began to really emphasize the fact that it should be short.
He said this showed that you didn't have a lot of vanity. The messenger himself said many times, publicly, that Malcolm had made him a very wealthy man, and this was true.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, if you don't want us to go home, the government doesn't want the black people to become involved in a mass exodus away from this country, eastward, give us a separate territory here, not a state. I've never heard Mr. Muhammad say a state or 3 states. I've only heard him say several states, some states, as many as we need, and we'll need more than you realize.
This is one thing that worried him sometimes. He used to say, later on, if I'm dead or something, he said, people are going to think that I'm what they saw on television. He said, they're going to think that's because he says the press and the media always takes out the part that shows me as if I'm some defiant, someone that's ready to jump on someone all the time, a radical. He said they pick out those parts to show. But they said they never know the real me.
Which was?
Which was really a gentle person. He was very sensitive to people. And he was very observant and perceptive. And as a result of this, it brought out a part of him that you wouldn't see ordinarily unless you happened to be have the opportunity to be close to him or travel with him or be in his presence other than when he was before the public. Because when he came before the public, he was a warrior.
We're trapped. We know no way out. So we get a wine bottle, we get a whiskey bottle, or we stick a needle in our arm, or we smoke pot, trying to find an escape from the hell that the white man has given us for 400 years here in America. So this is a false escape. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is offering a real escape. Not only a real estate, but a real escape right here on this earth. He says that the government itself is responsible for the poverty that makes you and me turn to alcohol, to dope, and to crime. The government is responsible for the bad housing conditions that exist here in Harlem. The government is responsible for the rats that bite our little children and the cockroaches that eat better than we do. The government is responsible. The government is responsible for the bad food that's sold here in Harlem at the highest prices. The government is responsible. Nobody responsible but the United States government. Look, all of the one who is the author of all of the vice, all of the immorality, all of these criminal acts of indecency that take place in our community. Don't look for the author in Harlem. Go downtown and look for him in City Hall. The one that's posing as your friend by day and responsible for your drunken condition by night. The one who's posing as your friend downtown, but who's the responsible for your unemployed and poorly housed condition uptown. And brothers and sisters, if you don't find him in City Hall, look for him in Albany, in the State House, or look for him in Washington, in the White House. I'll show you the man that's responsible for your problems. He got blonde hair, he got blue eyes, and he got pale skin. Some of them standing behind you, some of them standing in front of you, some of them standing on the side of you, some of them in uniform and some of them out of uniform. Those are the ones responsible for it.
His oratory. He was an orator that was not equal during that period of time. his tactics.
That's a broad statement. That was not
equal during that period of time, yes.
And you heard them all.
Yes, I've heard Martin Luther King. I've always thought of Dr. King as the best orator from the academy. That is, who had been trained to be an orator, who had had exposure, who had a doctor's degree. But Malcolm X, on the other hand, had a bit more flexibility. Malcolm X could speak to Dr. King, or he could speak to street people.
They call Mr. Muhammad a hate teacher because he makes you hate dope and alcohol. They call Mr. Muhammad a black supremacist because he teaches you and me not only that we're as good as the white man, but better than the white man. Yes, better than the white man. You are better than the white man. And that's not saying anything. That's not saying you know where just to be equal with him. Who is he to be equal with? You look at his skin. You can't compare your skin with his skin. Why, your skin look like gold beside his skin.
One of the most brilliant persons that I've ever met, who did not have a doctor's degree, but who was much more brilliant than many scientists, theologians, you name it.
Mr. Muhammad teaches us that man is judged by his conscious behavior, and the conscious behavior collectively of the white race toward non-white people has been the type of behavior that is practiced only by a devil or devils.
So then, in essence, you feel that white men per se are devils?
He teaches us that God told him that the white race is a race of devils.
Teaching this kind of a doctrine of hate and a doctrine of separationism, is bound to inflame the passions of people, wouldn't you imagine?
The deeds that the white man has committed against black people is what is inflaming black people. There's no teaching inflames anyone. It's what you do to a man that inflames him. And if the white man wants black people to love him, then he should do something to warrant that love.
The entire Negro population, the group, feels the way you do about it. I think they're probably more than willing to take their share of the world that's available to them and enjoy themselves in it.
How about you? I have no comment on this.
If he doesn't think that very many Negroes think like I do, then he is being mighty naive. Do you think that Negroes are going to continue to live in a society where dogs can be sicked on them at will and not do something about it? You're out of your mind.
Is there anyone here that would like to comment after having heard what Mr. X said?
No, I don't.
How about you, sir? Would you like to comment?
I don't agree with him because I'm not a follower of Muhammad myself. I think that all people have been mistreated in some form or another. But I don't agree with him. I don't follow Muhammad. I don't think anyone should follow one man. I think they should follow their own conscience. I think the main problem of most Negroes is that they feel sorry for themselves. And I think that this keeps them back much more than they would be if they didn't feel so sorry for themselves.
If Martin Luther King, Roy Wilkins, or any of these compromising Negroes who say exactly what the white man wants to hear is interviewed anywhere in the country, you don't get anybody to offset what they say. But whenever a black man stands up and says something that white people don't like, then the first thing that white man does is run around to try and find somebody to say something to offset what has just been said. This is natural, but it is done.
What was it that turned Elijah against Malcolm?
I don't think that was self-generated. He was continuously being preyed upon. His mind was continuously being preyed upon.
By
members of his family and other of the laborers or officials that were close to him. And they were continuously feeding his mind and turning him against Malcolm, feeding his mind with everything they could. They would turn him against Malcolm.
His officials and his family there in Chicago were the ones who were jealous.
They were opportunists more than anything else. And they didn't see the chance to exercise this as long as he was around.
So what began to happen?
Anything they could find that they could report back to headquarters that might make him look in a bad light, they would do it.
Do you think that might have been goaded and fed by infiltrators within the nation?
Sure, no question about it. I think that Mr. Hoover was at work, other government agencies were at work, and there were persons, I'm sure there were some rich Americans and rich persons from other parts who saw him as a threat to the capitalist system. And as a result of this, perhaps had their own people in there goading, disrupting. I think it would not have been too difficult to have had people there at Elijah Muhammad's side, people who were not true believers, but who were there saying, look what Malcolm is doing. Malcolm is acting like he's the leader, and that you aren't the leader, sir. And if you're beginning to grow in age, and you hear people telling you this, it takes a good deal of strength that you may not have to resist seeing Malcolm not as the friend that he truly was, and I can attest to, but as an enemy who was trying to take over the throne.
None of them had ever been the friend or been the servant to Messenger Elijah Muhammad that Malcolm had been. And they weren't trying to help the messenger in doing that. They were trying to cut Malcolm off from him and get him out of the way so that they could, in their opportunist way, take advantage of the situation.
Did you have a sense that Elijah was envious of Malcolm?
Oh, I think there's no doubt that he was envious of Malcolm. This, unfortunately, is a part of the history of mankind. In the jungles, we have it in animals. We have the old boar who no longer can procreate, and the young boar is there coming along. First he fights him off, tries to knock him out so that he's not with the herd anymore, and then he's gone. In humanity, we have the people who are in power, and then there's that bright young person who's coming along. They feel that the person in power feels that he or she is going to be disposed of. They fight, and they keep the person from rising. The old, unfortunately, sometimes don't want the young to rise up and be powerful because they're afraid of being displaced. I think certainly there's no question in my mind that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was unhappy with the power of Malcolm X.
He called me up from Chicago one day, and he told me, he said, I want you to meet me at the airport. He said, I'm on the way out back to the East Coast. He was in Chicago. He said, I'm on my way back to the East Coast, but there's something I want to talk to you about before I go there. So I'll get my ticket in a way where I can stop off and lay over in Detroit for a short time. And when I went, so I met him at the airport, and he looked like he was sick. He just couldn't seem to get himself together. I never saw him in that condition. And he told me what he had found out.
Very simply, Malcolm learned that Elijah had made at least a half a dozen of his personal secretaries pregnant. And this shook Malcolm to the bone, because Malcolm's devotion to Elijah was based upon Malcolm's complete belief and acceptance in Elijah's high moral code.
By having confidence in the leader of the Muslim movement, if someone came to me and I had no knowledge whatsoever of what had taken place, and they told me what I'm saying, I would kill them myself. The only thing that would prevent me from killing someone who made a statement like this, they would have to be able to let me know that it's true. Now, if anyone had come to me other than Mr. Muhammad's son, I never would have believed it, even enough to look into it. But I had been around him so closely, I had seen indications of the reality of it, but my religious sincerity made me block it out of my mind.
I said, you have been so busy that you just haven't had time to listen to anything, and said nobody was going to tell you. I said, I wasn't going to tell you, because the first thing you would have done was went back to Chicago, and because that's where he was. He would name names, who said it, and everything, and you know, put somebody on the spot because they were trying to pull his coat, as he might call it.
On November 22nd of 1963, President Kennedy was assassinated, and Malcolm made some comments about that assassination. Elijah Muhammad sentenced Malcolm to 90 days of silence for those comments. Well, Malcolm accepted that verdict. And during that period of 90 days, Malcolm X sent a constant stream of letters to Elijah. At the same time, however, he sensed the importance of having some record of these letters that he was sending to Elijah, so he locked himself up in motel rooms on several occasions and tape recorded these letters.
Dear Holy Apostle, one of the main reasons people want to divide you and me is because they know Allah has blessed me to be your best representative as well as your best defender. The only ones here who may think I'm against you are those who are not really with you themselves. This is a dangerous position to be in because it only adds division upon division. I know now how Isaac felt when Abraham took him up on the mountain to sacrifice him. Only love for his father made him submit silently to what looked like certain death. I know how Job felt when everyone was looking at him, wondering what sin he had committed. His worst pain must have come from his inability to open his mouth and explain the real reason for his condition. As I told you, I've been working on these notes I've taken during conversations with you during the past 10 years. Whenever I feel lonely, forsaken, or even angry, I go back to the words of wisdom and healing in these notes. There is both hope and life in your words. With Allah's help and your permission, I can turn out a book about your life, your teachings, your work, and the program that will bring tears to your eyes, and would not only go a long way toward waking up the dead nation, but would also add to the financial needs of the nation. I do it just like I was working for you, but would actually ask nothing in return. I've received my pay from you already a millionfold. If you would have mercy upon me and give me another chance, I'd stay out of the public. I'd be satisfied to just minister in the mosque, making no public statements, nor outside speeches.
He began to doubt if his meal was even getting through. He felt like somebody there was receiving that meal and getting it, and it wasn't getting to the messenger. Because he continuously write to the messenger and tell him what he had heard or report to him things that he thought he ought to make known, hoping to get some kind of guidance from the messenger as to how it should be handled.
So in other words, he tried to send the olive branch to Elijah, but many around Elijah intercepted it?
Intercepted it in order to keep that from taking place. They didn't want to see that happen.
When the 90-day period ended, and he still found himself not reinstated into the Nation of Islam, Malcolm realized that he had been silenced for reasons other than his Kennedy statement.
If you'll notice, they use their newspaper to slander me and to label me as a hypocrite and as a rebel, and Mr. Muhammad himself said that I defected. Well, in reality, I never even left the Muslim movement. They put me out.
So he decided to stay out of the Nation of Islam, and he struck out on his own. Yet, he, in his public pronouncement at least, refused to attack Elijah Muhammad. In fact, he openly voiced his support and continued belief in Elijah.
I'm a believer in the Honorable Elijah and follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I'm still a Muslim. My religion is Islam. I run into some obstacles in the Nation of Islam, and I feel that I can best serve the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's purpose and program and carry into existence what I feel, I understand, concerning his objectives better on the outside than I can on the inside. And now that I have the independence of action, it's my intention to work with everybody or against everybody, whatever the case may be, to try and get some kind of immediate solution to the problems that are confronting our people.
I told him then, I said, the best thing for you to do is take your family and leave here. Go to Africa or anywhere and let this thing cool down.
Immediately I saw the need for a base. And so since I am a Muslim, and I knew that I could never stand up in public and represent Mr. Muhammad anymore, and at the same time I didn't at that time want to say why I couldn't represent him, I knew, as his son told me, Wallace Muhammad, that the only salvation for the Muslims, they would have to turn toward the Orthodox religion of Islam. And it was Mr. Muhammad's son, Wallace Muhammad, who encouraged me to make the pilgrimage to Mecca and get myself orientated into the knowledge of the Orthodox religion of Islam. And at the same time, since I was a nationalist, I had to have a better knowledge of what the attitude of Africans was toward our people in this country, so I made a tour through the African nations.
In Egypt,
I had an audience with President Gamal Abdel Nasser for about an hour and a half. In Tanganyika, I spent 3 hours with Julius Nyerere. I flew from Tanganyika and Zanzibar to Kenya with Prime Minister Jomo Kenyatta, who's now President Jomo Kenyatta, and Dr. Milton Obote, who is the Prime Minister of Uganda. When I was in Nigeria, I had an audience with President Ezekwe, and in Ghana, had an audience with President Kwame Nkrumah, and in Guinea, I lived at President Sékou Touré's oceanside home for 3 days. Nowhere that I went did I run into any closed minds or closed hearts or closed doors. I got a chance to speak to people at all levels, in government, in religion, and just plain in the street.
Legon at the University of Ghana, where he gave his first speech the first night he arrived, and Vicky Garvin and Alice Wyndham, Julian Mayfield, and I were able to set up a series of lectures, appearances. The first night, a number of people came prepared to have their fists balled up and their jaws clenched, Ghanaians. And Malcolm just simply told his story. And the people stood and shouted, and there wasn't a full house. The next night, there was a full house. 2 days later, there were overflow crowds in the street.
Salam alaikum. Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies. Everybody is here. Recently, when I was blessed to make a trip or a pilgrimage, a religious pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca, where I met many people from all over the world, plus spent many weeks in Africa, trying to broaden my own scope and get more of an open mind to look at the problem as it actually is. One of the things that I realized, and I realized this even before going over there, was that our African brothers have gained their independence faster than you and I here in America have. They've also gained recognition and respect as human beings much faster than you and I. Just 10 years ago on the African continent, our people were colonized. They were suffering all forms of colonization, oppression, exploitation, degradation, humiliation, discrimination, and every other kind of Asian. And in a short time, they have gained more independence, more recognition, more respect as human beings than you and I have. And you and I live in a country which is supposed to be the citadel of education, freedom, justice, democracy, and all of those other pretty sounding words. So it was our intention to try and find out what was our African brothers doing to get results so that you and I could study what they had done and perhaps gain from that study or benefit from their experiences. The purpose of our organization is to start right here in Harlem, which has the largest concentration of people of African descent that exist anywhere on this earth. There are more Africans here in Harlem than exist in any city on the African continent, because that's what you and I are, Africans. The Organization of Afro-American Unity shall include all people of African descent in the Western Hemisphere. In essence, what it is saying, instead of you and me running around here seeking allies in our struggle for freedom, in the Irish neighborhood or the Jewish neighborhood or the Italian neighborhood, we need to seek some allies among people who look something like we do. And once we get their allies, it's time out for you and me to stop running away from the wolf right into the arms of the fox, looking for some kind of help. That's a drag.
Malcolm's development as an African nationalist grew by leaps and bounds. Following his second African trip, he displayed a sophistication and understanding of the liberation struggles that were erupting on the African continent. For example, in the Congo upheavals, Malcolm attacked CIA tactics that had caused that nation's legitimately elected premier, Patrice Lumumba, to be deposed and then assassinated.
Congolese have been massacred by white people in the Congo for years and years and years. And if the shoe is now on the other foot, only thing I can say is it's like chickens that always come back home to roost.
Do you personally feel, though, that there's some shame or involvement here or some guilt associated with the killing of other human beings?
I think that the white people should be ashamed of the deplorable situation that has been existing in the Congo, which is not the fault of the Congolese, but which is the result of instigation by European powers who are fighting each other over the mineral wealth of the Congo. And now to make it appear that the Congolese themselves are criminals or brutes because they're reacting to these injustices that they've been victimized by is again ducking the question.
I was with him in Detroit once. I remember him talking in Detroit about the fact that Lumumba had been killed and Tshombe had been used as a tool to overthrow him. He was talking at that time about the CIA. He was talking about how people in major powers use African leaders. And he was comparing this to use of American black leaders by presidents and CIA and others.
Tshombe is the murderer of Lumumba, who was the rightful prime minister of the Congo. Tshombe is the man whose forces fought against the United Nations forces and against the United States. And despite this criminal past of Tshombe, now the United States is backing Tshombe, who has hired South African mercenaries who are hired killers to disrupt the peaceful efforts of the freedom fighters from Stanleyville to make the type of country there that they want. And it is this American support of Tshombe, actually, that's at the root of the whole problem.
He delivered a speech to his followers at the Audubon Ballroom that focused on an interesting part of his overseas trip, his stopovers in Paris and London. Perhaps more than any other speech, this one reveals the threat that Malcolm had come to pose to Western interests.
I was invited to address the first Congress of the Council of African Organizations in London. They had a 4-day Congress from the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and had invited me there to make the closing address and bring the delegates from the various African organizations that are situated on the European continent up to date in regards to the struggle of the black man in this country in his quest for human rights and human dignity. And in conjunction with that invitation, I had gotten an invitation to visit Paris from the Afro-American community in Paris, which was sponsoring a rally in conjunction with the African community. And I was supposed to go there Tuesday also and address them and let them know the state of development or lack of development of our progress in this country for human rights or toward human rights. As many of you know, when I got to Paris, the man said I couldn't come in. Some man, French man. They gave me no explanation other than to say, we have our orders. They wouldn't let me phone the American embassy, and they tried to imply that the American embassy was behind it, which I told them that I didn't know de Gaulle had become a satellite of Lyndon B. Johnson. I knew that Kennedy had made a satellite out of Khrushchev and Britain and half of these other countries, but I didn't think that France was a satellite of the United States. Well, this made them angry because they like to be independent, you know, or pretend to be independent. The same thing happened in England. As many of you probably read in the Sunday Times and Tribune, there was a great fear in England concerning me speaking to the West Indian community. And this is because England has a very serious color problem developing because so many of our people are migrating there from the British West Indies. France, quietly as it is kept, has a very serious color problem developing because of the migration to France of our people from the French West Indies. And with these people from the French West Indies, black people, going to France, others from the British West Indies going to England, coupled with the Asians who are coming from the Commonwealth territories, along with the Africans from French Equatorial West Africa, formerly into France, and the British possessions into Britain. There's a large, increasing number of dark-skinned people swelling the dark population of France and Britain, and it's giving them a great deal of cause for worry. The only difference over there and over here being that no one of black skin in France has ever tried to unite the dark-skinned people together, neither have they done so in England. So you can somewhat see what their fear is. No effort has been made to unite the Afro-American community or the American Negro community with the West Indian community, and then those two communities with the African community, and those communities with the Asian community. This has never been done.
Think for a moment of the threat Malcolm now posed to Western interests. In a short time, he had clearly won over Africans wherever he spoke and was organizing them. He was amidst doing the very same thing with Africans in France and England, and he had a similar agenda for African descendants in the Caribbean, Central, and South America. Moreover, he was building a base here in the United States and was forming alliances with a broad spectrum of blacks in this nation, including the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Given time, he might have been able to unify all of these factions. But there's the rub. Concurrently, elements within the Nation of Islam were closing in on Malcolm.
The black Muslim movement tried to kill me in Los Angeles airport while I was in the company of the Los Angeles police. The Los Angeles police stopped the TWA airlines from taking off. They slipped me into a private room onto the plane through the basement because of the presence of these persons in the airport who were completely heedless of the presence of the police. Now, this airliner was held up an hour and a half. Every passenger aboard it was taken off. His luggage was searched. I was kept on the plane. My luggage was searched. And then the TW Airlines security agent flew to Chicago from Los Angeles with me. I was met at the airport in Chicago by the Assistant Attorney General of the state of Illinois and at least 20 different detectives. I was held in their custody for 24 hours. I appeared on the Cupsonet show. When I came out of the studio, officials of the black Muslim movement in Chicago even tried to attack the police to get at me. Police department from coast to coast in this country have the black Muslim movement well infiltrated, just as they have any other group well infiltrated. They are well aware of these plots and discussions that take place.
From thenceforward, it was only a matter of time for Malcolm. Although many today will insist that they were in Malcolm's corner, the truth of the matter is that there were only a handful who were genuinely loyal to him and tried to protect him. Meanwhile, those who were stalking Malcolm's life drew in ever-narrowing circles.
The various ones that Malcolm had kept the pressure on to keep them straight and to try to be an example of what they were teaching, when they saw the chance, when they saw, as Malcolm used to say, when they smelled his blood, just like rats do, they were ready to start eating his flesh. And they did everything they could to bring him down.
Never have the Muslims anywhere in the country gotten any kind of instruction from the national office or headquarters on how to defend themselves when they are attacked by outsiders. The only times the Muslims have ever been given any instructions to commit violence is when that violence is directed against a fellow Muslim.
He thought he was the cause of them being involved. And he had encouraged people to give money that they shouldn't have given, people who had taken money from their families that they should have been spending on their families, and had put this money into the nation to help build what they looked for as the future nation where they would all have an opportunity in.
So he
for
felt
such a
responsible to do what?
And he felt responsible to make them know what was taking place so that they wouldn't continue to do this.
Even if his life?
Even if his life was at stake. And you couldn't turn him around.
Well, I very much doubt that any of his followers who really are aware of what he has done would continue to follow him. He may try and justify it by saying that he's a Muslim, and that a Muslim has a right to these wives. If this were the case, these sisters should not have been humiliated. These sisters have been looked upon for the past 5 years, or 6 years, or 7 years as being guilty of having committed fornication. They have been debased, they have been degraded. I have heard him himself refer to them as having disgraced him. So if they were his wives, he should have given them a position of respect so that all of his followers would respect them and that they would have the protection of his followers today.
Well, we say that if he wants to talk against Muhammad, then he might jeopardize himself with the public, because there are many people living in America today that have benefited gainfully. And today, they walk with their chest out and their chin up. This is because they have, for the first time in 400 years, a man of strength and integrity that they can follow and honor as a leader.
Then you wouldn't put it past some of your followers to try and get Malcolm?
I wouldn't put it past a Christian to punch somebody out for talking about Jesus, just outrightly.
I'm in the house that was provided for me, although we're in a court battle, they're trying to get it back. And I have made this statement to them concerning the house, that they could have it. If they would take me back, that they would permit me to come before the Muslim movement, the rank and file, and explain or defend myself against all of the charges that they've made against me, they could have the house. But they are going contrary to their own laws by standing up in the mosque and indicting me, but never giving me a chance to defend myself. And they say that no one can judge me but Mr. Muhammad. In this case, Mr. Muhammad can't sit as judge because he's involved in the case.
Malcolm's house was firebombed. He and his family barely escaped with their lives. This left Malcolm all but defenseless, and with the agony of knowing that his life would soon end, not at the hands of white racists, but at the hands of some of his own people. Yes, there were elements within government surveillance agencies that were orchestrating and allowing events to transpire. But we must face the fact that there were black men who would become so clouded that they would kill one of the very best members of our race. Black men who, as Malcolm said, never raised their fists against the Klan or the White Citizens Council. Somehow, however, they found the militancy to murder a man of the caliber of Malcolm X.
Oh, yes, I probably am a dead man already.
And I heard my husband say, everything is all right, everything is all right. And someone about third or so that was seated in about the third row stood up, and I heard shots, and I saw people crawling on the floor. And so I got down too. But then when I was looking out and I saw someone look in amazement to the front, I knew they had shot my husband. And my children were crying, you know, what's going on, are they going to shoot us? And I just knew they had shot him.
Mrs. Shabazz, do you believe it was the black Muslims who assassinated your husband? When they were charging Malcolm with having bombed his own home, most people were not aware that not only did Malcolm not have a lot of money, but he didn't even have personal insurance on his own life or on his furniture. And I think this might indicate to some degree his dedication and the unlikelihood of him having bombed his own home, unless you want to believe he shot himself today as well.
He's trying to unite the Negroes in this country with the Afro-Americans in this country, I should say, with the Africans throughout the world.
Since the bombing of your home, has the police made any effort to offer you protection?
If Malcolm's assassins are caught, what do you think should be done with them?